Time for us to do sillier things like Plato. We're 10A1. We're at the Euthyphro dilemma. We're at a rock and a hard place. And by the way, I want you to know that there is, cold weather is never an excuse for reneging on any fashion commitment you have. Just let you know. Cold weather is never a justification. We're 10A1, where after Euthyphro modifies the second definition into the third one, what all the gods love is pious, and what all they don't like, or everything they don't like is impious. Socrates then at 10A1 asks this, what turns out to be a rather ominous question. Is the pious loved by the gods because it's pious, or is it pious because it's loved by the gods? And Euthyphro answers that he has no idea what this man's talking about. And this begins a portion of Euthyphro that is very difficult for Euthyphro to catch up with. It's really difficult for Socrates to explain what he's trying to do, and for Euthyphro to sort of get on the same page. And a part of the reason is that Euthyphro doesn't see a difference between the two, whether it's loved by the gods because it's pious, or it's pious because it's loved by the gods. Euthyphro seems to see it as the same thing. And maybe the first time you read it, you see it as the same thing. But there's an important difference between the two. Euthyphro just seems to see that the words are being changed around, but the meaning is the same. But what Socrates is trying to reveal to him is that a change in the sequence of the words also is a change in the sequence of cause and effect that he's trying to get Euthyphro to decide about. What causes what? This whole problem of cause and effect, particularly as concerns the gods, has sort of arisen and sort of left the Euthyphro dialogue and become sort of had a life of its own. And it's usually used in discussions of a particular moral theory, which is called divine command theory. So what I'm going to do is talk about divine command theory now, pluses and minuses and things like that. How that applies to the Euthyphro dilemma there, because the Euthyphro dilemma, just about what Euthyphro and Socrates is talking about, is just sort of local to, if we see it just as what they're talking about, local to the dialogue that they're in. But the way it has been applied to divine command theory gives it a lot of legs and gives it a lot of length, so to speak. And so even today, when you think about divine command theory, because divine command theory is alive and kicking, a lot of people who are religious and wish to be moral see divine command theory as their main way of understanding their moral duties. What obligations do they have? The obligations that they have in a moral sense are essentially reflected by the commands of God. And so, for many people, they are sort of divine command theory. Probably a lot of you, maybe not as theorists, but follow the idea that the commands of God determine right and wrong for you. So, let's first of all work with that. Ooh, somebody just cleaned out the tray nicely and left a little pygmy. Okay. Luckily, this shirt comes equipped with markers. Divine command. Some of you may think that divine command theory is about a theory about the commands of the transsexual divine and why you ought to follow them because she's big and, actually I think she's dead now, though, isn't she? Okay, it doesn't matter. She's not making any more commands, so it doesn't. So it won't be about divine, it's about actually the deity. As I said, divine command theory is the theory that the commands of God define right and wrong. So that sort of is where we start. And it seems like a pretty straightforward way of thinking about ethics. It's a way of saying, all I need to know what the commands of God are, and I know what right from wrong is. It's pretty simple. And most people take that as the way they sort of organize their moral life. If you have a moral life, or at least you have a moral life that seems to be centered around your faith, you probably are something like that, something like a person who adheres to divine command theory. Now, Socratically, if we think about divine command theory and think about just the basic premise of it, which is the commands of God, tell me what is right and tell me what is wrong, then we have to sort of ask, as Socrates did, the deeper question. That's what he's doing here at 10a1. He is asking a deeper question about what's dear to the gods. All we need to do is make just a slight translation and we can get into divine command theory and also ask the deeper question. So let's do that, and I'll sort of leave the pygmy marker aside and offer you two ways in which it could be done, in the same way that Socrates is doing it in Euthyphro there at 10a1. And the first way of interpreting divine command theory is, maybe this is what divine command theory means. It means X is right, X being any action X that we can think of as having some sort of moral component, moral content to it. X is right because God commands it. Maybe that's what divine command theory means. By means, it means sort of, what's the causal relationship between the commands of God and rightness? Because there at least are two possible ways we can look at it. If we're going to say that the commands of God and rightness are closely allied to one another, such that if I follow the commands of God, I know I'll be doing what's right, we have to sort of maybe back down one step and ask the deeper question of sort of the why question. Why are they and how are they causally connected? And the first one is, something is right strictly because God commands it. So that, what makes it right is that the command of God does that. The second possibility is God commands X, again, any action X, because it is right. Those are not the same things. These are two different causal claims. One makes a claim saying that the cause of something being right is the command of God. This one says the cause of God's command is that something is right. Those are two different causal claims. And to understand that they are different causal claims enables us then to analyze divine command theory more closely and ask which one is closer to the truth of divine command theory. Because you can't have both of them, unfortunately. They both point in opposite directions. The causal chain runs this way or it runs this way, but it's not biconditional. It doesn't run both ways. And so we have to look at these as separate things and decide, if you happen to be sort of enamored of divine command theory, which one most closely points the way toward your view of morals, based upon your belief in God and God's commands. So we'll look at them. We'll look at each of them. And one thing you will find, and this is something that Socrates will bring out as we go through Euthyphro, is that each of them has a drawback, at least one drawback, sometimes more than one drawback, so that if you choose one, then you're going to lose something you may want. If you choose the other, you're going to lose something you may want. You don't get everything. This is sort of a reality show where you don't get everything. Yes?
Kind of on the side, but doesn't, for like certain ethicists, or I guess between like the theologians and atheists, number two takes God out of the situation for like morality, doesn't he?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yep.
Yeah.
So it depends on what kind of a Christian are you. Are you a number one kind of Christian, or are you a number two kind of Christian? And that would...
Ooh, that sounds pretty nasty. Now, pissy or shitty, you mean? Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't mean it quite that way. But okay, yeah, really, I think each of them could define a particular version of faith. But it does depend, and you have to understand, if you're going to be number one, you're going to give something up. You're going to give more up than you think. If you're going to be number two, you're going to give something up, maybe more than you think. But both of them are consistent, at least with a version of Christianity, or a version not just of Christianity, but a version of theism that you can find today. This is why it's worthwhile to bring this up in a contemporary class, because even though this happened maybe 2,500 years ago, the issues being sort of plumbed here are issues that we can still think about, and it can be useful for us to think about concerning the status of the commands of God and rightness or wrongness in a moral sense. So let's go with the first one, because that's the first one I put up there, and we'll see how it works. But Elias, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, not Elias or something. Okay, Elias. You were right. One of the downsides of the second one is that you could see it as a way of essentially cutting God out of the herd.
Justifying.
So let's do it. Let's keep God in the herd for a while and do number one. X is right because God commands it. What that means is that the only thing that makes something right is the command of God. It has no other reason to be called right. Only the command of God identifies as that right. So prior to the command of God for any particular action, it was neither right nor wrong. It was morally neutral. Now that's going to cause a couple of problems, not immediately, but when we think, let's say, we think of what this entails, it can cause problems. So let's go back to why would you listen to God for right and wrong? Why would that be important? Why would a person want to follow the commands of God? Now, this is sort of a rhetorical question, but go ahead and answer.
Well, I was just thinking because humans have so many different opinions on what's right or wrong. To have something above a human giving a definite, yes, this is correct, what humans want. They don't want to wonder, they want to be told what's true.
Right. They don't want something relative that will change every time with fashion, or change with culture, or change with a different century or something like that. They want something that's solid, stable, maybe absolute perhaps, but something that if it comes from God, it's not going to change. It's going to be there forever. So yeah, that's one very, very important reason why people, I think what you would argue, look for maybe an escape from the kind of wishy-washy relativism that many people see come out of human ethics. They come from, because every human, like everybody, every human, we've all got a behind, and we've all got a theory of what you like to move. They're maybe equally valuable. So that's one thing.
You finished it with the relativism.
So that's one thing. But why God? What is about God? Check.
Well, spiritually speaking, many people want to have absolute certainty of a paradise beyond. If there is a better life afterwards, to seek God's answer means that, well, it would follow that you would seek His favor. If you seek His favor, you will get the better outcome of.
Okay. So we're talking about self-interest now.
Yeah.
We're talking about, you want to make certain you don't become a crispy critter in the afterlife, and so therefore you follow the commands of God. Well, that really sounds like God is sort of coercing you or manipulating you, or in some senses making you fearful enough for your afterlife that you'll do whatever the hell He says, including bomb buildings in New York, if that's the way it's going to be. So that's.
Never heard of the Crusades.
Anyway, so I mean, I'm saying that if fear of what's going to happen or hope for what's going to happen in the afterlife is your motivation for following the commands of God, then you'll follow anyone powerful enough who has convinced you that they control your destiny in the afterlife. And so it seems like if morality is about doing the right thing, this is about doing the expedient thing. Casey?
Isn't God supposed to be perfect?
God's supposed to be perfect, that's true. What kind of perfection would be relevant to Him issuing moral commands?
Well, you'd have the perfect answer.
Hmm?
You'd have the perfect answer.
Perfect answer in what way? What kind of perfect answer?
Perfectly good answer.
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, so God, if you believe God is perfectly good, then following His moral commands makes sense. I agree. That's very good. I was trying to get you to do that, and you did it. So it took a little while. And I think what you came up with good as well. I think these two things go together, looking for certainty and looking for maybe in some sense absoluteness, but also looking for a source of morality that can be seen as morally perfect. And that's what you get with God. Or do you? How can we establish that God is good? Now, if we're going to say anything is good, in a moral sense, we probably have criteria that we have to apply to it. So I think if we're going to use the term God is good, remember this is a philosophy class, which means we use rational processes to understand how we apply terms and how we analyze things. And so for most theists, obviously God is good. We don't need to go beyond that. Unless you're a Satanist and God is evil, and that's a good thing, so to speak. But that's we'll leave Satanism out of the mix right now. It gets a little too murky. In philosophy of religion class, which I teach, I do have a nice video on Satanism, if there is such a thing as a nice video on Satanism. So you want me to show it here? It'll cost a lot of money.
We talked about this in ethics, but we pondered the idea that good and evil don't merely perceptual. It's all about in whose eyes is it good, in whose eyes is it evil.
Well, to a certain extent, that's gonna, I'll sort of try, I'll bring it up in a slightly different way here.
Right.
But it's not exactly that, but it's coming close to that point that I made before. Well, let's think about how can we say that God is good? Or we can say it, but how can we use the term God is good, or use that phrase, or that claim, God is good, and have some reason to assert it, have some reason to say that God is good. Now, the problem with it is, as I said, if there are criteria saying a person who does this is good, a being who does this is good, God does this, therefore God is good. That'd be very, very nice. That means there's some sort of external criteria for what counts as being good.
I thought God was the external criteria.
Hmm?
I thought God was the external criteria.
Oh, no, but in this case, he's not the external criteria. He is the internal criteria because it is his commands that define right and wrong. So if his commands define right and wrong, good and bad, then how can we then say God is good? Because he's making up the rules for what's good. Let me put it another way. Here's the better way. This is a wonderful way. You'll love this. Except remember, I am crossing my fingers behind my back when I make this offer to you. So the offer is null and void, but it's going to sound pretty good. Okay? There we go. I don't like grading people. And you probably don't like me grading you. I haven't graded you yet. Well, a couple of you I have, and you know you don't want me to grade you again. So I've got a deal. I don't like grading people. It's my last semester here. Why don't I just take it easy? Why don't I coast? Not go through the heartburn, the heartache, bombing people out and that kind of stuff. So here's what we'll do. No test. We're going to give up on this test. I'll show videos. You don't have to watch them if you don't want to. Discussion board, yeah, what a pain in the ass. And so we'll give up all that stuff, okay? I do want you to come occasionally because, I'll have on different shirts all the time. You'll want to see them. And I may bring food, and that'll be good. You don't want to miss the bacon jam. Got to promise you that. You miss the bacon jam, you miss the whole course. So, but grading, that's so tacky. I don't want to do it. I'm judging you. I don't want to be judgmental. I want to be accepting of you. I want to feel as if you're all good people, you're all worthy people. And so here's what we'll do. You attend, whenever you can. There's no going to be an attendance policy anymore. But come the last day of class. Come on the day of the final. And what you do is you give me a piece of paper with your name and your student number on it and what grade you want. That's what I'll give you. No tricks. That's what I'll do. I'll just give you whatever grade you want. Okay? And then that takes all the pressure out of the course itself, takes all the pressure out from you and from me too. I don't have the pressure of breaking your heart or making you pissed off or having to start, carrying a metal detector on me when we have office hours. Those kinds of things are just, everything will be fine. Anybody have an objection to that? I get the feeling there would be a zero objection. Oh, come on, Melanie, you're going to object to this?
What are we going to learn? Isn't this a learning process?
Well, it's up to you to learn. It's just about grading. It's just about classifying whether you're good or bad as a student. I don't want to do that. You can do it yourself. It's much
What
better.
incentive do we have to
Whether
learn?
we're good or bad?
Huh? Say, Jack.
What incentive do we have to learn at that point?
Oh, well,
It's all
that's your
learning.
problem. If you don't learn, you still get the A that you want. So that's no big problem.
Then I have an
I
A
mean-
that means nothing.
Means nothing? Come on, it's there on the transcript, right? I hope you're getting the point, and you're right, I agree with you, Jack. You have something also,
I
I'm
don't
sorry.
remember what it was.
But the point is, this is a very good analogy of the first formulation divine command theory. If God gets to make up right and wrong, good and bad, then how can we then say God is good? Because God makes up the rules for what's good. To say God is good, there has to be some sort of independent criterion for applying that term, or the term is meaningless. Just like if you're going to say, I'm an A student because he gave me an A. Yeah, you made up the A that you gave, and so there is, it's a circular kind of an argument about that. So here's the problem. You want to follow, for your moral commands, you want to follow somebody who's good, so you choose God, but then if we're going to say, according to the first thing, that the reason things are good is that the commands of God make them good, then you've ended up having absolutely a worthless definition of good. It all depends on what this particular being decides is good. And if this particular being decides tomorrow that something else is good, then suddenly that's good, even if it's the opposite of what was good today. So you might say, no, God would never do that. God is consistent. That's sort of the point you were making. The consistency of moral commands is what makes God preferable over any sort of human source of morality. And that may or may not be true. And so let's see why it may not be true. I'll cite a website that I like a whole lot. Cite a site. Oh, how wonderful. I will cite a website I like a whole lot called religiostolerance.org. Religiostolerance.org is not promoted by any particular religion, nor does it promote any particular religion, but it has information about as many possible religions as it can, as well as unbelief, different versions of atheism, agnosticism, stuff like that. All the varieties, both of belief and unbelief, are sort of presented there. You get links to different places to go and learn more about them. And it's amazing what the great variety of belief and unbelief there happens to be in the world. And a couple of years ago, the website occasionally will publish scholarly papers or reprint scholarly papers that were in some of the journals. And there was I think it was in an anthropological journal. This scholar, this professor, had done some research and came up with some finding that, as best she could see, her research showed, that there were 50,000 different religions on Earth at this time, about 2005. 50,000 different religions, or denominations, or faiths, whatever you want to call it. And some of them were sort of just offshoots or denominations of a mainstream one. I happen to know a guy in Overland Park who has a sort of a closet Catholic congregation that still does the Mass in Latin. It's not forbidden, but he's a real traditionalist, and so he does the Mass in Latin, and has some other kind of, one could call it deviant beliefs that doesn't make him really a mainstream Catholic. And so you can probably see how easy it is. If some of you are Baptist, are you Fred Phelps Baptist, or are you a different kind of Baptist? Or are you maybe a William Jewell Baptist, or are you I don't know, I'm not going to go too far into the variety, but you can tell that, or I'll just tell you that the research showed that there are about 50,000 different beliefs. Now, why are there 50,000 different beliefs? Why not just a couple or three? And the researcher there sort of asked that question herself and said, well, each belief has the sense that, or has the conviction that their route to God is the best route. Otherwise, they wouldn't be there, because they would say, oh, this route over here is the best one, so we'll all sort of join this church. Now, each one thinks that there are some flaws in other churches that make them the other churches, less suitable and less a correct route to God's favor, to knowledge of God, and that either the worship they perform, or the moral code that they espouse, or the way they depict the divinity, any of these things are much closer to the way the divinity desires, or is, or demands, etc. That's the route. That's the best route to God. So let's assume for now there is sort of one best route, because otherwise, you have to say, at the very least, human beings otherwise may be somewhat mistaken. But let's assume there is one best route, and God is a little picky. Maybe God is sort of a detail man or woman or whatever. If you read some of David Hume's dialogues on natural religion, some funny things that one of the people in the dialogue says about, if you look at the earth and how everything doesn't fit together, God must be senile when he made this earth. Or maybe he's a small child that was just sort of playing with his Play-Doh and made the platypus of all things and all these other stuff. So there are a whole lot of interesting ways in which Hume tries to talk about our conceptions of God may not be anywhere near what God is really like. But we have 50,000, essentially, conceptions of this combination of who God is, what God wants from us, what God expects of us in our behavior and our worship. Then we have a problem with, as she said, most religions also say that there are consequences, and this is sort of what Jack was talking about. There are consequences if you get it right, and those are good consequences. And there are consequences if you get it wrong, and those are bad consequences. And so, if, let's say, there is one optimum route to God, and there are 50,000 possible routes to God, here's the one way to say it. You're all going to hell. Yes?
If God says, if you're not wine, you're not mine, then it pretty much goes along with what you just said. We are all
And I think that that's exactly what Socrates is saying more and more in his work, that all gods are one God. You know, we have to settle on the recognition that if there are such things as divinities, they're all essentially the same God. If we can't sort of get together on that, then we're going to continually have, because when he was thinking about the depictions that you threw about all the gods fighting and stuff like that, I mean, that was really a depiction not of the gods fighting. That was a depiction of people of faith fighting on earth because they can't decide. I mean, if their gods are fighting, we're fighting too. Why are we fighting? We're fighting because we think our God is so jealous that it only wants it to be our way. So this paper says that the probabilities, the mathematical probabilities of anybody, assuming that God wants us to get it right and will punish us if we get it wrong, the probabilities are 1 in 50,000 that we got it right. You know, just a fluke of luck that we were raised in the right church, or we converted to the right church, or we happened to hear the right evangelist at the right time, or whatever it happened to be, however we came by our faith, that the chance is only 1 in 50,000 that we got it right, which means essentially, probabilistically, you're all going to hell. Yeah, it's okay. I'll be there with you, no problem. You know, we can continue the class later. I don't know if they have bacon jam down in hell. It's probably a little hot down there, and all the stuff would have melted. We'll have to find something a little heater. We'll find it. You know, no popsicles in hell. Man, that's tough. So anyway, we'll continue on. But what she was saying is that the proliferation of religious beliefs tends to, and actually, so what you're saying, tends to isolate us in faith. And that tends to make it a problem for divine command theory, number one. Certainly, it makes it difficult for us to understand what the commands of God are, because just as we have 50,000 different ways of viewing God, we have 50,000 different interpretations of the several kinds of Holy Scripture and books, etc., that are out there. And so if we're looking for the commands of God, because those are the things that make something right and wrong, we then have to ask, how do we know that the commands of God that our faith follows are the commands of God? Now we have, oh wait, but it, it's been verified in the books and all the great prophets, etc. Well, look, that's hearsay evidence. I'm sorry, I'm going to be a lawyer here. That has nothing to do with any direct evidence that these are the commands of God. These are just what some stumbling old farce back in the old days said happened, and we have seen how, well, never mind. That the important thing is that if you're looking for the commands of God to determine right and wrong, then you just have this enormous banquet of the commands of God, just as having an enormous banquet of everything else based on this. Now, the proliferation of religions and gods, so to speak, and commands of God really holds you hostage if you hold this point of view. If you hold this point of view, it's hopeless. It truly is hopeless. It is a fool's errand to do anything other than be arbitrary. And in philosophy, you don't like to be arbitrary if there's another choice. And so we have choice number 2. Let's try choice number 2. See if that's any better. God commands X, I get any action X, because it's right. Now what makes this different is that the commands of God don't determine right and wrong. Right and wrong exist independent of the commands of God. That when it says it is right, that means somehow separate from the commands of God, rightness and wrongness have been established in something like, you might say, a condition of reality, one of the boundary conditions of reality. The way I sort of like to say it, and this sort of evolves with each semester, so I'll be saying it probably different than I said it in ethics class before for you two. It just, each time I teach it, I do it in a slightly different way. So you're actually, all of you are getting a slightly different course than last semester's course, because I always like to rethink and rephrase things. So that in some sense, rightness and wrongness, according to this one, let's say one interpretation of version number 2. Rightness and wrongness are sort of what you might call the boundary conditions of reality. Nothing can exist, let's say, for conscious, intentional creatures. By conscious, intentional creatures, you probably understand what I mean. Conscious meaning, like we are conscious. Okay, some of you aren't, but still, most of you are conscious. And let's say you each have the capability of consciousness, particularly if I put some bacon fat under your nose. Oh yeah, well, so conscious, intentional meaning you use your consciousness, at least in part, to intend certain actions, and maybe or maybe not follow through on them, but you have the capability of forming intentions and maybe acting or maybe not acting upon them. So consciousness and intention. When you have conscious, intentional creatures who are capable of thinking and acting upon their thoughts, then we need to, the argument goes, maybe the conditions of right and wrong are boundary conditions that exist. And maybe we ignore them, maybe we follow them, but they exist, and this is the way things ought to be for you conscious, intentional creatures. That would be consistent with the second version of divine command theory. It would be consistent because the right and wrong are out there somewhere, out of the touch of God. Now that's an important thing, because just as you had to give up the idea that God is good, and actually that's a really important thing to give up, here you have to give up the idea that God is omnipotent. Because God is incapable of at least one thing. God is incapable of changing this boundary condition of reality. The boundary condition that says this is right and this is wrong. And whatever God may think of it, if he is going to be good, he is not going to mess with reality. There are certain kinds of reality, maybe physical reality, he is capable of creating. But if you think of the creation story in the very beginning of the six-day creation story, the very beginning of Genesis, it's really the command of God that creates things. Now, if we're giving up the idea that God can create rightness, because that turns into a whole lot of real problems, then you have to recognize that however rightness came to be as an external condition of reality, God couldn't have created it, because it isn't subject to the commands of God to make something right or wrong. Rightness and wrongness are out there external to God. So you have to give up, if you wish to, give up omnipotence. There's certain things God can't do. What you get, however, is you get objective standards of right and wrong. They're there. God can't even change them. We can't change them. Nothing can change them. They're going to be there. So that's a positive aspect, if that's what you're looking for. But often what people have to give up is more than what they think they'll get at the end. And Elias was right when he said that fundamentally this is something that, if we look at it carefully, the right and wrong is something we can find without God's help. God is not necessary in the search for right and wrong. But if you say, wait a minute, I want to take a shortcut. We don't want to take a shortcut, I know that. I want to take a shortcut. How about I listen to the commands of God, because if God commands X because it's right, if God is omniscient, knows everything, he knows right from wrong. And now we also have a way of saying God is good, because if God consistently commands what's right, and known to be right, then commands of God show that God is good. So we can sort of restore God's goodness under this. We take his way as omnipotence. But then we have another problem. We've got any number of problems. This is great because it just brews a lot of problems. Go ahead.
Wouldn't that be circular logic?
Huh?
Wouldn't that be circular logic? If it kind of justified the right?
Yeah, that's going to be the problem. The problem's going to come up. If we're going to say, okay, if we spot that the commands of God are always telling us what's right, then because what's right and what's wrong are external to God's commands, then it must be the case that we already have knowledge of what's good or what's right, in order for us to say that he's always ordering us to do the right thing. And therefore we don't need God at all. Unless again you want the shortcut. But here's the problem. You want the shortcut, say, look, I don't want to search for right and wrong, even if it's out there. If we can show that God is good, I'll just follow the commands of God. You do that and you revert back to this problem. Which commands of God? Which God? How do we do it? And the whole thing becomes a real mess. So if you wish to be a divine command theorist adherent, I'm not going to argue with you. I really want you to see that in the formulation of this causal question, both sides, and these are really, again, both mutually exclusive ways of stating the question, of stating the solution. And each of them has significant and serious drawbacks, certainly for the believer, for a person of faith. And so this is why the Euthyphro dilemma, suggested by what Socrates says there, 10a1 and 10a2, this is why the Euthyphro dilemma has a lot of longevity, has a lot of legs, because it suggests a problem that is at this point, and it seems to be somewhat both unsolvable, and second of all, one that tends to be either kept from or believers keep themselves from knowledge of. The complexities and sometimes difficulties of basing a particular mode of action on the commands of God. And so I'll leave it at that because I think it's enough for divine command theory right now. But I think it's a worthwhile thing to show how the...
What if you don't take the shortcut?
Pardon?
What if you don't take the shortcut?
If you don't take the shortcut, that's fine. Then what you have to do is find a way to discover right and wrong on your own. Now, the question would be
Sounds
what
like that
method
to
should you
me.
use? And we can say, for philosophers, we always think, well, probably rationality, reason is the best way to discover right and wrong. There's an area called moral epistemology, which is a fairly interesting but rather narrow field of view, which holds the view something like this. The standards of right and wrong can be discovered in the external world, maybe not the physical world, but some way external of commands, external of lots of things. There is a rational route to right and wrong. And the way to find it is sort of the question. And moral epistemology attempts to describe various ways in which we may be able to discover right and wrong if it's out there. There have been, I think, rather sort of foolish ways of thinking that the truth is out there, so to speak. Something called natural law theory, which actually is still the preferred Catholic way of reasoning about morality, makes the claim that God has not only created everything in the physical world, but everything in the physical world has something like a lesson for moral behavior by humans in it. And so if we can only reason about what we see in the natural world and the physical world, then we will have our lesson. We'll know what morality is by thinking about that. That's how, for instance, the church comes up with a restriction on homosexuality, the view that sex is only for the creation of babies, and therefore any other use of sex is unnatural, and so homosexuality, well, also contraception because it doesn't create babies, also things like sex after menopause is wrong, sex after vasectomy is immoral. All these different things which consciously and intentionally prevent the sex act from producing a child is immoral because natural law says that when we study the way sex operates in the natural world, we can see that the major reason sex exists is for procreation. Thus, God made us capable of understanding that and made sex the preferred method for at least animals to procreate. Therefore, using it for any other reason is immoral. So that's a kind of, the truth is out there, all we have to do is sort of think about it. It's, I think, not too much of it. It's a very anthropocentric point of view, the view that everything in the world is there for human,
Anthropocentric? What'd you say?
natural law theory.
The word used to describe.
Yeah.
Anthropocentric?
Yeah, anthropocentric. It means centered on humans and human activities and human everything. I used to teach a course, invented a course really at KU called Environmental Ethics. And anthropocentrism is the view that all of nature was created just for human use and human pleasure and human enjoyment. And in environmental ethics, we often take a view that at least is worth considering whether nature has its own value in and of itself, and that that nature was not either created or evolved for human purposes, but it has its own, you might say, its own rationale and justification. Jack?
Taking the divine law theory, taking the law theory, wouldn't that just bring you back to the same problem as before with circular reasoning?
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, so many of these things get right back to the problem in the first formulation. Yeah. So unfortunately, it's interesting to think about them, but unfortunately you find that there's a certain center of gravity there, number one, that always seems to draw you back whether you want to or not. So the question is, if you're going to get drawn back there, maybe you need to go in some other place. Like you say, find out for yourself, then you'll be a little better off than in case.
Well, when right and wrong's external, and the second one, you accept that, and then you're like, well, now I have to find right and wrong by myself. That's no longer my command theory.
Exactly. It's no longer, once you say, I'm going to find it on my own, you cease to have a religious-based moral theory. It's all you, the Lone Ranger, or the lone, whatever you are, go out looking on your own. So that the ironic thing is that one of the few ways in which what was initially a religious-based ethics can work is if you take God out of it, take the religion out of it. It's, this is Socratic irony at a different level. It's a kind of irony. It's just not Socratic irony, but it's divine irony. Okay, if you don't mind, I mean, can't God have a chuckle every once in a while? I think he must. So anyway, that's where this little question that Socrates came out, sort of snowballed through the history of philosophy in 2,500 years, and this has been around for a long time, as long as people have been thinking about divine command theory and reading Euthyphro, which happened to be, certainly since a medieval time, people have been puzzling over this, and so it's sort of it's interesting because it, first of all, illustrates one activity of philosophers, not to sort of mess with your religion. I don't think any philosopher, okay, some philosophers are badasses, but most philosophers aren't trying to mess with your religion. They're trying to get you to think beneath the level of the superficial. And sometimes when you think beneath the level of the superficial, you come up with some thoughts that are uncomfortable and maybe disquieting. And so that's part of the bargain. And you didn't know you're getting into that bargain, I suppose, when you signed up for a philosophy course, but that's the bargain anyway. Well, one of the problems, as I said, with Euthyphro and Socrates talking about this is that Euthyphro doesn't seem to understand what's happening. And one of the next problems that comes up here, when we get past 10a1, we get to B and C, you find out that Socrates doesn't do a very good job of explaining. I think 10, B, and C are about the worst parts of this book. I think that the difference between leading and being led, carrying and being carried, that kind of stuff, I think it isn't anywhere near as clear as it could be. And whatever Socrates is trying to do to clarify for Euthyphro and to try to get him to understand the difference between the two, and the difference between the two is essentially a logical priority or logical causality, one of the two, that he's not doing a very good job of explaining it in there. And when we get to something like 10d and on past that, you find that Euthyphro seems to be willing to say, so like he says, so okay, Socrates says, okay, so it's loved by the gods because it's pious, right? No other reason, right? And in the letter he says, so it's pious because it's loved by the gods, right? Yeah, right. So he agrees to both of them at different times because he doesn't know there's a difference between them. And what Euthyphro needed was a good lesson in logic. Maybe you all do too. Maybe it's time to start that. Yes?
Are we going to do logic problems?
Hmm?
Are we going to do logic problems?
Not exactly logic problems. We'll have examples on the board, and they will be dismaying and saucy. Okay, they will be either dismaying or saucy. Huh?
Dismaying and saucy logic problems?
Logic problems, yeah. You can have dismaying and saucy logic problems. Logic doesn't all have to be, Socrates is a man, Socrates is mortal, therefore we're all dead, or something like that. No, we can have okay, that's not quite a logic problem. Let's talk about logic. Logicet. No, that's not it. Logicet. We're going to spend about the next 2 or 3 days. You're going to spend it here in a dumbfounded stupor trying to write. I'll be up here putting crap on the board and that board and writing on the baby shit wall back there. I mean, it really is that wall. Something you scrape out of. Look, I've changed diapers. That's a baby shit wall. So anyway, for those of you, look, one of the reasons why I have this horrible look on my face all the time I'm teaching is not because of you all. I mean, you all are wonderful, beautiful, handsome, smart. It's that damn wall. So please don't take it personally. When I sort of go, it's the wall. It's not your answers or anything like that. So now we could do it this way. We could just turn everything around. And I'll stand here and maybe you turn your chairs around. And then you can all hurl for about an hour, okay? Yes?
Really quick, is number 2 still considered under divine command theory, or is that its own theory?
It's merely thought to be one of the implications of divine command theory. If you're going to state the first one, you got to state the second one because that makes it logically complete. But when you work it out, it tends to be either something that collapses back into number one or leaves the command zero behind. Was that me?
No.
Octopus head? That looks better than my own head. It's really good. I like that. Okay. Octopus head is here to teach you about logic, and so that's what I'll do. This is another way of saying my teacher sucks. No, tentacles. Okay, never mind. Logic is a process of reasoning, but it's sort of, you might say, the science of reasoning. It's the structured technique of reasoning. And logic is something we use in all parts of philosophy, value theory, epistemology, metaphysics, and it is a way of determining what manner of reasoning or what example of reasoning is worth listening to that establishes the point it wants to, and what manner or way of reasoning does not do it. So it's a way of weeding out good reasoning from bad reasoning. So philosophers and all of us, when we talk with people, we typically are trying to make a point. We're trying to convince somebody of something. It may not be we're trying to preach to them necessarily, but sometimes it's just sort of a thing that you're out with somebody and you say, you know, that thing looks terrible on you. You shouldn't have worn that. And you give your reasons for it. You know, it clashes with this. It went out of style 3 years ago. It's like my shirts, I guess, in a way. So, and so what you do is you make a claim that looks terrible on you, and then you end up giving reasons why it does, and essentially you've been reasoning with someone. And what you've done is you created an argument. So let's start off with that. Arguments are the way most of us, if we do it well, try to get our point across to other people. Most of the conversations we have eventually get to the point where you're trying to convince someone of the truth of what we'll call a claim that you're making. A claim, arguments are all made up of claims. That's more or less the philosophical term for it. It's certainly a term I like, because if you think about how arguments are constructed, they're just constructed of declarative sentences. Every declarative sentence makes a claim, an inferential claim. It doesn't, you often don't think of it as making a claim, but every declarative sentence by inference is saying the content of what I have presented here is true, and is trying to get you to accept the truth of the claim. Unless someone's a liar or a bullshitter, which is something we're doing in the bullshit class right now. We're watching a great movie called Network, which is an old 1976 movie, and it's one where lying and bullshitting and telling the truth really do seem to mingle together in some sort of an incestuous threesome. And it's unfortunately not that kind of threesome, but it's still a matter of the almost sometimes indistinguishable natures of each of them. But claims, in a logical sense, are declarative sentences, and all declarative sentences, by inference, are trying to make a claim that they are true, called truth claims. So often we call them truth claims. So let's go to declarative sentences, make certain you understand. Because declarative sentences are not the only kind of sentences you have. There are lots of ways we can use sentences, particularly in English, to do other kinds of tasks. You can ask questions with sentences. You can shout something, sort of an exclamation. You can do an interjection. Maybe by Zeus would be an interjection. Doesn't make a claim out of anything. Did he even claim that Zeus exists? Really, just something like that. Or you can order someone, eat the damn applesauce. It's not a way of making any kind of a claim. Perhaps I may have poisoned the applesauce just for this purpose. Oh, you want to give it back to me now? It was very, no, it's got no preservatives. It's only got 2 kinds of apples and no sugar.
Only one kind of poison.
And sweetened dried cranberries. Nothing, no preservatives, no MSG. The fact that everything came from Dirty Don should not dissuade you from, because I did cook them a long time. So anyway, and they sat out open with flies festering on them for a couple of days before I followed it up. So declarative sentences are the kinds of sentences which a truth claim is made. So all arguments are made up of declarative sentences. Nothing else works in logic. All logic is at least composed in some sort of an informal way of groups of declarative sentences. Well, within an argument, declarative sentences play two different kinds of roles, and so I'll talk about them now. Each argument will have within it a declarative sentence which we call the conclusion. Now, some of this you may already know before. You may have had it in speech class or persuasive writing class or some English class, something like that. It's okay if you've already had it. You got to do it again. And reiteration is a good thing sometimes. So one of the declarative sentences, one of the claims in any given argument will be the conclusion. The conclusion is the point you're trying to make. It's sort of the bottom line. Not always physically at the bottom, but it is what you're trying to convince whoever you're talking to or writing to the truth of. So that's one kind of claim or declarative sentence. The other sentences are all what are called premises. And premises are declarative sentences that offer the reason or the reasons why the person should accept the truth of the conclusion. Now I put the letter S there at the end of premises in parentheses because you can have a one-premise argument. In fact, I will introduce you to a one-premise argument when we look at the first meditation of Descartes. The main argument he makes in this first meditation, which is a rather brief meditation, essentially is a one-premise argument. So you can have a one-premise argument. Now, there's good and bad in how many premises in an argument. If you really want to make certain you have a good job of convincing, you do a good job of convincing, you probably want to have quite a few premises, all this evidence sort of being marshaled to make it almost inevitable that the conclusion is true. And that's good. And you think if you only have one premise, that really isn't giving a whole lot of reasons for the person to accept the truth of the conclusion. Well, of course, there's truth in those two claims, but again, the more premises you add, the more challenges you add, the more possibilities someone can challenge a given premise and say, well, that's not right, or that's not relevant, or that doesn't make any sense. And when you start getting into the business of challenging and discarding premises, then you end up de facto having an argument that's starting on shaky ground. So it's a balance between too many and too few premises, but you can have a one-premise argument, and I'll show it to you later in the semester. So that's just sort of the first thing of a long train of stuff I'm going to put on the board about logic. Now the next thing, first of all, I want to tell you one thing we're not going to do in the class, although it would be fun, it would really take a lot of time out of it, and this class is not supposed to be fun anyway. This is fun for me, but I'm supposed to be the only one who enjoys it. This, it should be drudgery and terrible. So I hope I'm doing my part. If I'm not, let me know so I can do that. I can't stop having fun. It's just hard to do that. So I'm not going to have you construct your own arguments. I'm not going to have you build arguments. This sort of talks a little bit about the building blocks of an argument, and it is. The building blocks are claims or declarative sentences. And one thing we could say, probably, all claims are declarative sentences and all declarative sentences are claims because they essentially are almost synonymous. Claims is a term that almost is limited to, let's say, the logical description of declarative sentences. Their function in an argument is to make a claim about something. But all declarative sentences do make a claim about something, whether they're in an argument or not. So that would be sort of a biconditional. They are the same. While we're not going to construct arguments, and I'm not going to ask you or demand that you construct arguments, we are going to analyze arguments that already exist. And we'll analyze arguments in the works that we read. So this is not just going to be an annoyance, for a few weeks, or for a few days, just to make sure you know something about that fourth part of philosophy. It's going to be an annoyance the whole semester, because you'll be expected to do some analyzing all semester. So let's look at what I'll call evaluating arguments. Actually, wait, let's do it over here. You people, just bad peripheral vision, I'm sure. So let's do it over there. This is evaluating arguments. order to evaluate an argument, well, first of all, what we're trying to evaluate is the argument any good? This is something we ought to pay attention to. When we get to the bottom line or the conclusion, should we accept it as true or should we discard it? Should we, what do we look for to determine whether we should listen to an argument or not? And there are two things we look at, only two. And I'll put them up here in the order in which philosophers typically make these evaluations. The first evaluation is on the structure of the argument. Just how it is put together. And you will be amazed, maybe you won't be amazed if you had something like this before, but if you haven't, you'll be amazed that you can have an argument that has the same exact component parts in it, and whether or not it's any good or not will depend a whole lot on the order in which these claims get placed. Place the claims in a particular order, the argument's good. Place the same claims in a different order, the argument's bad. And I can show you why they're bad and why they're good. Just the change, just changing the location of claims. So structure of an argument is crucially important. The reason we do it first is it's a way of disqualifying bad arguments so you don't have to go to the second step, because both of these have to be done, and if one fails, the whole argument fails. So if you can find out that an argument fails the structure test, then you don't have to do the next test. You just walk away, and it's a good idea. So when we look at the structure, what are we looking for? What's the goal of a good structured argument? Well, the goal of a good structured argument is to guarantee that the conclusion is true. Well, how would it do that? Well, it depends on a couple of things, but the structure is something that can at least guarantee the truth of the conclusion if the premises are true. That's sort of what we're going to worry about the truth of the premises as well. But the structure is something, if you arrange things right and the premises are true, the conclusion must be true. That's a nice thing. It's a guarantee. It frankly is a guarantee about an argument. If you analyze it right and you can say, yes, the structure is good, it's beyond criticism, and then you can say the premises are true as well, you are guaranteed that the conclusion is true. So there are two judgments you make about the structure, and I'll show you with some examples next week how we make these kinds of judgments. There are two judgments we make about structure. It can be valid or it can be invalid. A valid structure is one that we often say confers the truth of the premises to the conclusion. So that if the premises are true and the structure is valid, the conclusion is true. Close the door and lock it, it's a done deal. Validity is something that if the structure is right, it works 100% of the time. That's a great thing about a lot of logic. This is a form of logic, a kind of logic called deductive argument logic. There's also inductive arguments that we won't do, because most of the stuff we're going to be looking at in the books here are deductive, and most of let's say the great work done in philosophy is deductive arguments. So that's what we're doing here. So we won't even talk about, other than me just now mentioning it, induction. This is all about deduction, deductive arguments. A deductive argument, if it is valid 100% of the time. There's never an exception. That's a nice thing, because you probably are already getting the idea as we're going here through divine command theory. The philosophy has a lot of gray area in it. Maybe a little, maybe here, maybe yes, maybe no. That's a great thing about evaluating the structure of an argument. It's either yes or no. It's either good or it's no good. End of story. There's no middle ground. If it is invalid, all that means is that it is less than 100% valid. So, let's say, in 99 applications, a particular structure may be valid, but there may be one application when it's invalid forever. So it's all or nothing. It has to be valid all the time, or it doesn't count. And if you took a course in logic, I teach online logic. By the way, there'll be a couple of online logic sections coming up this summer, and let me encourage you not to take them. I think it's a good course, but we're doing logic in 6 weeks, and it's over. And it is hellish because it's online. There's no real, nothing. I just sort of assign stuff and watch people sink into the muck. I mean, it's So whenever I have students here in class, I tell them, look, let the online schmucks take that course. You don't take that course. I mean, it's a horrible course in which I will tell you right now, a third of the people who sign up for it stay. And those that stay, maybe 2 A's. So it's a tough ass course. So I think there would be a much better survival rate if it were done in class, but we're being encouraged in MCC to put as many classes as we can online. And in philosophy, probably something as cut and dried as logic is probably the best candidate for putting something online rather than ethics. So I tried ethics for a couple of years, or intro, or philosophy of religion. Those things I think would be much more difficult to teach online. So I put them up mainly just to keep the administrators happy. But whenever I know anybody, anybody who's been a student of mine, I try to treat you right if you're a student of mine, and say, stay away from that course. So I'm just saying, I think a logic course is great. Take it in class, you can learn a whole hell of a lot. It's a wonderful thing. But online, you can really sink from sight real fast. So back to the structure of an argument. If it's valid, it's valid 100% of the time. If it's invalid, it's valid less than 100% of the time. So that's the first thing to look for. Now, if the structure is valid, then you go to step 2. And step 2 is looking, as you can probably guess, at the truth of the premises. To look at the truth of the premises, obviously we have some way of determining truth from falsehood. And sometimes the premises may be technical. If you read a little bit about my biography there at the end of the syllabus, you know that I've been a meteorologist. I was a meteorologist for 20 years, worked in research, worked in thunderstorm research mainly, and that was always an interest of mine, and taught severe convective storms as well. So I could probably produce a good argument about different kinds of severe storms, dryland storms that form sort of on a portion of West Texas. They're really interesting. But I could give you an argument as to why dryland storms produce big hail, but if you didn't understand the meaning of the premises I was laying out there about the vorticity equation and crap like that, then you couldn't tell whether the premises were true or not. So I could snow you. That's not what I want to do, of course. But one of the problems with determining the truth of the premises is sometimes you need to have certain kinds of technical expertise or knowledge in order to do it. But in ordinary conversations you have and you're trying to convince somebody of something, and you're talking about your personal life or their personal life or what happened today, yeah, that's pretty easy to understand the truth of the premises. There's one important thing. When I talk about the truth of the premises, it's similar to validity. In any argument, all premises must be true. Just one false premise and the argument gets booted. So just one mistaken validity and the argument gets booted, same thing with the truth of premises. One false premise. That's why if you have a whole lot of premises because you're trying to pile on and somebody can point out just one false premise, the whole argument collapses unless you can find some way to take out the premise or replace it or something like that. So this is, again, an all or nothing kind of a situation. If the argument is valid, which is the only reason you go to step 2, and all the premises are true, we call that argument sound. And you can guess that if at least one premise is false, it's called unsound. So these are the 2 ways in which we classify an argument. And that's as far as you go with classification. If an argument is sound, that's the highest compliment you can pay for it. That's the highest, that's the best you can get. You can't have anything better than a sound argument. And an unsound argument is merely an argument that is valid because you wouldn't even test it for the truth of the premises until you tested the validity. Validity is a lot easier to test and a lot quicker to test. So an unsound argument may be valid, but at least one premise is false. Therefore, if you can't fix the premises, you can't fix the argument. So that's the beginning of talking about logic. And we'll sort of end it right here. And any question about anything I put on the board, any question about anything at all, don't forget that this weekend the videos evaporate. And maybe new videos will suddenly manifest themselves as if like mushrooms on a wet lawn in the morning or something like that. So you have until Sunday night at midnight to do that.